It's a video that I've been looking at doing for a long time. I recorded some stuff a long time ago and just never got around to actually piecing them together and making a video. This time we're going to be taking a look at The Crew from Ubisoft. It's kind of an open world exploration car game. You have various different car specs and types that you can use, as well as a variety of customizations. But the big key thing is the world map, which is pretty much all of North America, scaled down to an in-game size, but it's still particularly huge compared to other video games. The free roam aspect of the game is pretty nice, where you can pretty much go anywhere, do anything you want. But there's also bonuses for exploring. There's also player versus player races, different skill challenges, and things that you can do throughout the world map to boost your skills and gain rep. One of the main things of the game is to group up with a crew of your friends and then take on other crews in various challenges and competitions. As well as there's a faction-based system where you can earn rep with certain factions and gain access to certain bonus missions at the end of each month, depending on how your faction places. Anyway, we'll get right in and take a look at some of the features and some of the flaws of this game. So the first thing we have here is the title screen. Originally there was some really bad networking errors with the game, and down here in the bottom corner you can see where it says open on the NAT. Kind of went by pretty fast, but they added that so you can go through and manually open your ports and get a better connection. It looks like that's been taken care of in the new version, but it was a real issue at launch. Here we have our world map. And you can see here all the different players that show up on the world map right now. The downside is, because of the network issues of the game, they limited you to 8 players per instance, which is just terrible in an open world MMO type game. So after you see that, we'll bring it back up here. You can see all the different events and things going on nationwide. You can filter by all these different tabs here. We'll go back to players, and you'll notice that now there's only a handful of players that show up. Apparently this is going to be remedied in the new expansion. It's going to be expanded to 20 players, but for now it's at 8. From our map view, you can zoom all the way in down to street level. You even see traffic here. And once you've been somewhere on the map, you can teleport there to save yourself some driving. And here we are in downtown New York. It's a performance spec of a 69 Camaro here. Has been one of my favorite cars to drive. It's a little hard to turn, but once you get used to that, I absolutely love the thing. Not quite as good as some of the other supercars out there, but definitely a fun one to tool around in. It's mainly my exploring car these days. So the first thing you're going to get is a factory stock spec car. That's what we have here. Mine's been customized a little bit as far as the paint and things go, but this is your stock version of a car as it comes out of the dealership. No modifications, nothing extra on it. You don't use these very long in the game, pretty much just when you start. Next here we're pulling in the street garage. Street specs are pretty much your street racing specs. They have the add-on of nitrous. You can start customizing the look of your car as far as body panels, hood, things like that go. You can also start customizing the parts under the hood to make it a little more your style. For the beginning of the game, these are kind of what you're using, and there's various events that require street cars. These are pretty much the best ones for just driving around in. This is our street spec Ford Focus. couldn't find a decent event that wasn't a storyline mission, so you have to excuse the narration talking in the background, but gives you kind of an idea of how the street cars handle. When you think of most street racing games, this is the spec that you're going to have.
Local law enforcement.
Helicopter's really loud. Of course, I'm racing against the computer here, and their specs are way below, so not much of a challenge. Next spec we're going to take a look at is the dirt spec. This is pretty much your dirt road, cross-country type spec. You're going to use these a lot in the Midwest where there's a lot of unpaved roads. They have a higher suspension, a little bit more forgiving when it comes to bumps and jumps. Tend to be a little bit lighter, plus they're not quite as fast as your street specs. Again, with these you can customize their look, body panels, and everything under the hood. Here we have a look at a solo time run for a dirt spec. See, we're on a dirt road here. Cars tend to drift a little bit more because there's less traction on the road. And most of your dirt roads tend to have jumps and things of that nature, which your heavier suspension can take. At the same time, if you were to drive a dirt spec car on a road, because of the way the tires are designed, they do tend to drift and slide a lot because they're made to get grip on the dirt, not on the asphalt. They're kind of fun. I see a lot of people take them up into the snow and use them to drift around Salt Lake City, which is kind of fun. A lot of your dirt spec roads are going to be like this. Canyon passes up in the mountains. Although there's a lot in the Midwest which are just cross-country, out in the middle of nowhere dirt roads. But they're all relatively the same thing. The next spec we're going to take a look at here is our performance spec. These are pretty much your high-end, maxed-out power specs. This is where you're going to see superchargers added to a lot of the muscle cars and things like that. These are designed for pure acceleration, top end, that sort of thing. I find these one of the most fun to cruise around in just the world explore, but at the same time they have quite a bit less durability than the street spec, and also run the risk of bottoming out on certain roads that have potholes, and they're absolutely terrible if you get off-road in dirt. Here we see our 69 Camaro again in the performance spec. Like I said, it's my favorite car to just drive around in. I love the whine of this supercharger and the rumble of that nice V8. And you get this thing out on some open highways where there isn't a lot of turns and you can really open it up. A lot of your high-end exotic cars, the Ferraris and Lamborghinis and whatnot, only come in performance specs. So that's something to keep in mind. Next spec we're going to look at is the Raid spec. These are your beefed up, heavier versions of a dirt spec pretty much. They've got more horsepower, more torque, and a lot more armor. These are the kind you're going to use in takedowns where you have to wreck an opponent's car within a certain amount of time. The armor plating does add a ton of weight, which makes them terrible for jumping and things, but the heavy suspension makes it so pretty much any terrain treats the same. Whether you're driving on asphalt, you're driving on dirt, or just in the middle of the woods somewhere. Pretty much handles the same. Raid cars suffer from the same problem that the dirt spec cars do, is that they have very little traction on actual asphalt. But on any other type of terrain, they're the beast. I actually tend to use these more than my dirt cars for just even dirt road racing nowadays. Because of their torque and horsepower ratio, their acceleration in first and second gear is usually kind of low, but once you get up there to speed, they're actually decently fast. This one here is a buggy that you can actually put together from parts you find throughout the world map. But there's lots of other cars that have a raid spec as well. And you can see here they're made for just completely rugged and rough terrain. And the last spec we're going to look at is the circuit spec. These are pretty much your on-track racing specs. These things are made for absolute maximum speed, maximum handling, maximum braking, at the cost of everything else. They are only good on asphalt. If you take them on anything other than pavement, they're absolutely terrible. They sit so low to the ground and their tires have no grip. At the same time, they tend to bottom out a lot on certain roads because they do sit so low to the ground. That said, though, they are the fastest cars in the game. This is my RUF Porsche in circuit spec. You can see here this race kind of starts out on the salt flats on the hard packed sand. And the tires spin, and you can even drift a little bit on these turns because of the low traction on these cars. But once you do get going, and we get over here on the pavement, it can really take off. And as I said before, these are among the best cornering, the best handling, the best accelerating cars in the game currently. There are a few of the supercars which are actually just a little bit faster in their stock mode. For balance purposes, when you put them into performance circuit and whatnot, it actually lowers some of their stats. The Koenigsegg is the one that comes to mind the most. The full stock version of that can push 270, where the performance one only hits about 230. But definitely the circuit specs are the most race-ready vehicles. Again, they're very light. They tend to get air off even the slightest little bumps, and they do tend to bottom out a lot on any unlevel roads. But at nice stretches of freeway like this, you can really see where you can just push them to their limit. There's several different views in the game. I usually use this third-person far-out view just because I like the field of vision it gives you around your car. There's this windshield view, which for some reason you sit in the middle of the car. I've never understood. But it gives you a lot more feeling of speed and kind of an aspect of being in the car from this angle. Next we have the hood ornament camera, as I call it. This one gives you the most feeling of that you're just flying, especially in the faster cars, but makes it very hard to judge where your car is when trying to weave through traffic. Next one here we have the interior, and this one's really nice. It's not available in the console version, it's only in the PC version of the game, but you can actually look around the cab, and every car's interior is different and looks exactly like the interior of that specific car. This is probably the best view if you're really into Sims and using a steering wheel to play the game. Really gives you the best feel that you're actually driving. And here we have our third-person close camera, and then back to our third-person far. I hear that pinging noise on my radar here. It means there's a hidden car part nearby, which you can use to unlock cars like the buggy I showed you earlier. There's also a hot rod and several others. You have to collect all the parts to unlock those. Somewhere over here. There it is. Now we can head off to the garage. Once we're in the garage here, you can look over. There is our hot rod in the process of being built. Once you get access to all of those parts, you can actually take those cars out. And there's the dirt version that I already have completed and ready to roll. And there's a look at the circuit version. And there's also a street and a raid spec of those. While we're in the garage here, take a look at our parts. These are the various pieces of your car you can customize. As you get them, they come in different colors. Bronze parts are the lowest, silver are the intermediate, gold, and then platinum once you get to level 50. And you can see the stats that these add to your car. And they also have various abilities, so you can tweak those depending on what you want to do to your car. If you want a faster acceleration car, you can tweak all your parts to be acceleration based, or vice versa for top speed as any of the other stats. There's a variety of different locations that you can drive in. Here we're in downtown New York City. And depending on the time of day you're in these areas, the traffic varies. If you come here at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, there's less traffic. Where if you come here around 5 o'clock at night, the streets are packed in two-way traffic and you really can't go anywhere. Kind of a nice little thing they added on. From the city, we go out here to the west. Now you can see we've just got open roads out here in the plains. Lots of free room to roam, lots of open highways. You get out towards the deserts and there's lots of long straightaways as well, which are really nice. My favorite place to come out and test my cars out, actually. Next we have the marshlands down here in Florida. Great place to take out raid cars and just tool around, splashing through the glades. It's a lot of fun just to cruise around out here. One of the cool things about the game is being able to go to landmarks and places you've actually been. Here we're in downtown Las Vegas, heading over to the Strip. All the famous hotels are here. None of them by name, though. I don't know if they did that for licensing reasons or whatnot, but pretty much resembles the actual thing. Very close, anyway. This is actually the covered roadway by the Golden Nugget. That big LCD screen above you. This is an awesome stretch of highway that runs along the Salt Flats, just north of Vegas. And really like these open highways where you can just push your car to the limit. Isn't a heck of a lot of traffic out here, and most of the roads relatively straight, so you can really open up your cars and see what they can do. A lot of fun doing cross-country trips through here with your friends and your crew, and basically just cruising. One of the nice aspects that attracts a lot of players is the PvP versions of the game. For them, you can come to these lobbies here and queue yourself up. You can also do any race or challenge or event throughout the game in a PvP friendly with your friends and your local crew. If you put together up to 4 people and go do those events as well. These ones are PvP specific, which now have their own ranking system and everything. I don't think they did when I recorded these clips, but now they have a cool ranking system and everything for them. You pick the spec of the cars that you want to drive for the event. Then you're going to go through and pick the type of race that you want. There's simple point A to point B, there's lap races, and then these ones here, which are actually kind of fun. The Blitz Brawl, where there's little points that show up throughout the town, and then you have to race to them and then hold the position as long as you can before going on to the next. For each kind, there's a ton of different actual races you can pick. And then you wait for your players to queue up. In the new version of the game, players get to vote, which is a lot nicer. One of the other things you can do throughout the game are skill challenges show up. This one's called an escape. You basically have to get as far away from this point as possible in the time allowed. There's basically a shockwave on the map chasing you. And you have to outrun the blast while getting as far as possible. Next type of skill here is a mountain climb. Unfortunately, I recorded these all at night, apparently. These ones basically have to get from the bottom of a hill to the top peak of the hill as fast as possible. There's these various little bonuses you can get along the way. Some of them are out of your way, though, so it actually costs you more points to go get them. And our goal is just to get to the peak there before time runs out in the fastest amount of time possible. Next up, we have jump challenges. This one in particular is kind of fun. My son holds the record on this one because he got hit right at the last minute and actually cleared that bridge. That's his ghost there, you see. They're found in various places throughout the world and a lot of fun. And there's precision skill challenges. These ones you have to get through these gates. The more gates you get through, the narrower they get, but the more points you get. If you miss one, they widen back out, and you pretty much have to start over. You missed a couple there. Now they'll be wider, but the point bonusers start over. You just have to go through as many of them as quickly as possible. They're more about accuracy than speed. You can actually be slower on those as long as you hit each gate. Next up, we have a follow the line challenge. Some of these are on dirt. This particular one's actually on a racetrack. And you basically just have to stay on this little line, which gradually gets narrower the longer you go. The more you stay on it, the more points you get. And this is a really long time ago, I can tell by my driving. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to those. The off-road ones are a little harder because there's jumps and things you have to avoid as well. Next up, we have Scramble. These ones are actually quite difficult. I find raid cars the best for them. Basically, you're driving, usually in off-road situations, weaving in and out of things, and trying to hit these little markers. The more you can hit in a row, the bigger your bonuses get, and the more points you score. Seems relatively easily, but they do put them in some weird patterns, and some of them are on jumps and things, which make it really hard to get to, but I'm getting a lot better at them than I used to be. They used to be my worst challenge. Now I think my precision is, but... Next we have our Slalom challenge. Circuit car is usually the best for these. Definitely you have to do these with any of your cars, though, as they give different parts for rewards. So you end up doing them with a variety of cars just to get the different parts. Slalom's basically just what it sounds. You gotta weave in and out of these little poles. Usually they're on open stretches of highway, but there's quite a few in the cities where there's traffic and everything else to swerve around as well. And that's pretty much it. The basics of the game are all there. And overall it's a solid thing. Now on to my complaints. Definitely there are some. First and foremost, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the lack of players in an MMO is terrible. Limiting only 8 players per instance is just wrong, especially with such a large world map. And it makes the game feel very open and deserted. Obviously, there's tons of people playing when you do a skill challenge and you find out that you're ranked, 28,000th, but you only see 2 players ever on. Kind of gets annoying. They are remedying this with the coming expansion and bumping the local player up to 20 per instance. Still needs some work, I think, but definitely makes things feel a little bit more alive. The other huge downfall to the game was networking issues. And despite it being the crew, it was extremely rough and hard to get to play together with your friends. They fixed this a little bit with the NAT restriction tool that appears on the title screen now, and instructions on their forums on how to open up ports and things, but even with that, it's still extremely difficult, especially for multiple players on a single router. Like me and my son here can play together, and me and a friend of mine across town could play online together, but when the three of us tried to get together, it gave us all sorts of problems, even seeing each other at times where our friends list said the other person wasn't online. Hopefully that gets fixed here again in the future. Lack of cars is another big one. At launch, there were only 40 cars available in the game. They've since added another 30 or 40. There's quite a variety now, but they're all relatively the same type. You've got lots of American muscle cars, you've got some European cars, but only like 2 or 3 Asian cars in the entire game. In the world of car culture, when Asian cars pretty much dominate a lot of the market, it's really a shame to see them missing in the game. So hopefully that's something they can remedy in the future as they add more cars. They've definitely started doing that, so it's good as long as they continue in the same direction they're going. And probably the final complaint I have about the game is the complete and utter lack of a guild or clan type system. In a game called The Crew, where you're basically supposed to make a crew of 4 guys and go out and do all this stuff together, they advertise on the videos where the 4 cars are together and then their logos all merge into a team logo and things. The game itself has none of that in place, which is really disappointing. All your crews in game are pretty much a pickup group, and as soon as you log out or whatever, they're gone. There's no permanent system, there's no crew reputation or anything like that. Would have liked to see it use a guild system similar to something like EverQuest or Guild Wars, where you're actually together in a guild working towards guild reputation and goals. And maybe you can cycle out who's in and out of the group and still be members of the guild. But right now, crews work just as a pickup group. They're temporary, and it's just whoever's on at the time. And because of the network issues at launch, it was really hard to get 4 players together to make a crew, let alone 4 permanent ones. Definitely it's something that needs to be looked at in the future, and hopefully they can fix that. And definitely be a lot more interesting once these issues get worked out. Overall, the game's still a lot of fun. I enjoy playing it. A couple of my friends play it with me now, and they all have fun, despite the naysayers out there. The game does have its issues, but it is getting better, and I enjoy it, and hopefully we'll enjoy it for some time to come.